This is the second episode where I cover conservation hero stories. Today, we're going to be talking about Zazou Saeed, who is a surfer and known for her prominence by stepping up and reducing single-use plastics in the Maldives. We're going to talk about her story, what happened, just a really quick summary. I want to highlight these ocean heroes, and we are just going to continue with these stories as I find them. So if you know of an ocean hero story, tell me about it. I'd love to hear from you about it. You can hear how to get a hold of me in this episode. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a conservation hero story. We're going to be talking about local hero Zazou Saeed, who is a young Maldivian educator and ocean advocate, surfer, athlete, and through her work with youth groups and schools spreading awareness about ocean plastics. So she became a vocal campaigner against single-use plastics, particularly bottles, bags, and straws, using art, storytelling, and education. Zazou collaborated with NGOs like Zero Waste Maldives, Save the Beach, and Parley for the Oceans to build grassroots momentum for systematic change. She helped mobilize youth for beach cleanups, school programs, and citizen science initiatives. So here's the thing. The problem was that the Maldives faced an acute marine plastics pollution crisis. As a small island developing state, a SIDS, the Maldives relies heavily on imports, most of which are wrapped or shipped in plastic, so including food and so forth. And it can be quite a problem when you get rid of that. You have to figure out what to do with that. Despite its global image as a pristine island paradise, plastic waste rushes up daily on its shores and smothers nearby coral reefs. In 2018, the Maldives was ranked the top per capita plastic polluters globally. So the impact was marine life such as sea turtles, manta rays, and reef fish regularly ingest or become entangled in these plastics. From waste management in that area, in that country, is difficult due to limited area because they are small islands, a series of small islands. So much of the plastic waste is burned or dumped. So dumped where? Dumped in the ocean. Tourism, which is a major part of the economy, was a risk due to increasing waste visible on beaches and reefs. I want you to picture the Maldives. When you picture the Maldives, you picture pristine blue waters. You picture these white sand beaches. You picture beautiful hotels and resorts and beautiful areas, little towns and villages where people are just enjoying life on the reef. It's not an easy life for most people. It can be quite a difficult life because you have to import a lot of food. A lot of stuff is imported just to be able to survive and live like a lot of the rest of the places. But you have to be very careful how you live on these small islands. And a lot of them are very low on sea level rise. So sea level rise can impact them. A lot of things can impact them. Now, marine plastics, a huge problem. It's a huge problem everywhere, not necessarily from the Maldives, although, like I said, a lot of imports wrapped in a lot of plastic that can make it even worse. But, they get other plastics that come in, other debris that comes in from currents from other countries and so forth. It could be terrible. So you need somebody to step up and you need somebody to do conservation. Zazou Saeed did that, and she stepped up and she did a lot of stuff. So the conservation action that came from, being vocal campaigner through art, storytelling, and education, and collaborating with NGOs like Zero Waste Maldives, Save the Beach, and Parley for the Oceans helped get more conservation action. So some of the conservation action was the ban. They needed to ban single-use plastic. So in 2020, the Maldivian president, Ibrahim Mohammed Solih, announced a phased ban on 12 single-use plastic items, including plastic straws, cutlery, plates, and cups, PET beverage bottles, so PET beverage bottles under 500 mils, and plastic bags and sachets. That covered most of the plastics that were out there, being a problem and nuisance for the Maldives. So Zazou's role, while not policymaker herself, Zazou's advocacy helped share public sentiment and political will through a bunch of media campaigns featuring Maldivian youth calling for plastic bans, testifying to the value of protecting island ecosystems, elevating the voices of school children and coastal communities directly affected by plastic pollution. So just by highlighting people and having them tell their stories through media campaigns allowed people to really understand and connect with the people who were there, right? It's not like major organizations that are talking about plastic bags and showing 4K video footage of, plastic pollution and making it really dim. What they did is they got youth, they got people who want to use their voice to talk about how the plastic pollution affects them and their enjoyment of life in and around the Maldives, which is, supposed to be a paradise. And when it's not a paradise and people live there, you don't want to see that. You want to make sure that that can get rid of. So by elevating these voices of youth, of adults, of school children and coastal communities that are directly affected by plastic pollution, it allows people to really connect. It allows even policymakers and regulators to be like, this has got to stop. I don't want to see these faces on, posters, on video, and on the internet. I want to be able to make sure that we see these school children, these youth, these adults, happy, enjoying their coastal community, enjoying things. So the first thing, the implementation timeline, so the ban went in. It was a phased approach. So the first phase began June 1st, 2021, targeting imports of banned items. So that's interesting. And then they went, local businesses were given time to adapt, and eco-friendly alternatives were promoted. So that's the first phase. And so why it works. So local ownership played a role. So advocacy was driven by the Maldivians, especially youth leaders like Zazou, giving the campaign legitimacy and cultural relevance, and also the government receptiveness. So the Maldivian government responded to the growing local and international pressure to protect its natural resources and tourism industries. They actually just bought into it. They're like, okay, there's enough pressure here. We have to listen to our people. Or, one, we're not going to get reelected, but this is what the people want. This is something that we can do, so we're going to do that. Using education as a tool, Zazou and partners focused on educating students and communities, fostering a generation-wide cultural shift. So going from wasteful behavior to non-wasteful behavior, having that generation come up. It takes some time. It takes years to happen, but that's a long-term solution, and that's a best solution that will really pay it forward. So strategic partnerships also help. So collaborations with NGOs, media, and schools scale the message and provided alternatives. You need to have partners. You need to have collaborators. Too often, we have organizations and we have people who try and do it on their own. You cannot do conservation on their own. You can lead from one single person like Zazou Saeed, but it's not always the case. It's not always what you need to do, and it may not get you over the hump. You need people. You need to collaborate with people who have audiences, right? And I think that's really important. So let's just look at some of the impacts that we had so far. So there's been increased public awareness. So more schools have now waste sorting programs, which is great. And sustainable living has gained traction. So more people are trying to be sustainable. It's like the quote unquote cool thing to do. There's a policy shift. So the plastic ban set a precedent in the Indian Ocean region, inspiring other small island developing states and coastal nations. Once people see that it can be done, it'll transform the policy around different areas and it'll travel. And I think that's really important to see. Youth empowerment is really important as well. Zazou's visibility helped inspire a wave of young ocean advocates across the Maldives. When you have people who lead that look like you will want to follow, you will be inspired to do what they are doing. And I think that's an important point to ram home. Sometimes it's hard to lead. Oftentimes it's hard to lead. Sometimes you don't have the path ahead of you. It's not written for you, and you have to forge your own path. But as ocean heroes, they tend to do that on their own. It's just a natural thing that they tend to do. Sometimes it's not as natural, and you have to do it yourself, and you have to force yourself to do it. There's always sticking points. There's always challenges. But you can do it if you stand up and you become an inspiration to the community around you. And that's what's happening in the Maldives. So some of the challenges, this goes without challenges. It never goes without challenges. Enforcement, so monitoring plastic imports across hundreds of islands is really difficult. So that's one of the challenges. Alternative access. So not all islands have easy access to sustainable products, particularly outer atolls. So it's a geographic separation. A geographic location can make a change. And then, of course, behavioral change always takes time. So it's a long-term change, requires continued education and incentives for both locals and tourists. That takes time. Behavioral change, nobody likes to change. Behavioral change takes time. If anybody's been on a diet or wants to lose weight, you know that it requires a behavioral change. I'm going through that right now. And behavioral change is difficult, but it can be done. So now looking at like the legacy and the future. So Zazou Saeed is now part of an international youth conservation networks where she is sharing her story at global climate and ocean forums. So now she's inspiring not only people in the Maldives, but other places. Her work is featured in the UNESCO reports and youth-led conservation case studies. The Maldives continues to build on the policy, now exploring circular economy approaches and marine litter tracking systems. So this is great. To have a story like this, I feel like is inspiring. It's a different area. There's small island atolls. There's a lot of challenges that face a small island, especially a small island developing state. They have a lot of tourism where you have people come in and some, let's be honest, some tourists don't care about the island that they're visiting after they finish visiting. It's just they've checked the item off their bucket list. Maybe they polluted a little bit or they wrecked a reef by accident or something, but really they just go home and do their thing. It's not always, butterflies and puppies, right? When you go to a place like that and when you leave, not everybody's going to be perfect. So, that happens sometimes. So there's a lot of challenges in these small island states, especially when tourism is a big factor in their GDP. And having people like Zazou, having people that she inspires, having governments that buy in because there's enough people that are talking, there's enough people that are standing up and saying, hey, we don't want this plastic pollution, you get results. Plus you get a chance to inspire others. We have a lot of these types of stories from local heroes. And we talked about the orcas and the industry-led orca whale watching fleet in the US last episode. Now we're talking about an individual, Zazou Saeed, from a small and developing states, just essentially hitting challenge after challenge after challenge and overcoming those challenges. And so we're going to cover more in time. Not going to say next episode, but we'll do more in time if you like these types of stories. If you know someone or some organization or, some local association that has done something similar or have been a local hero in conserving these local communities about their ocean, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean. Leave a comment down below if you're watching this on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell if you want to see more of this type of stuff. We're just talking about conservation. We're talking about how to protect the ocean. I want to thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, from the True North Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.